lie. I'm dreading this final season of Mob Psycho 100. Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. I'm dreading this season not because I don't like it. No, polar opposite. I love Mob Psycho 100. It's become one of my favorite shows. I love it. I love watching it. It's not even a comfort anime. It's just like a motivational, inspirational anime that you're just like, you get done watching, you're like, I feel better about myself after I watch it. It's like going to therapy in a 23-minute session. And I've loved this series so much. And it's weird to think that I started it like nearly in the summer. So like not, half a year ago. But man, this is the final season. And I'll be honest, I have held back as long as I could to start this season. I have waited to the last minute because I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to start the last season because it's going to be over and it's going to be really sad. But it's time. So I did before, we're going to have two different updates here. One is the Reagan Thirst update. Obviously, there's been lots of Reagan happen these last couple episodes. But then the other is the OVA. We just did that last week. But there was like an OVA that was supposedly was season 1. It was like an hour long. And it was like Reagan, the majestic psychic or whatnot. We were talking in the Discord about it. And Truck was saying that it's weird because it's an OVA that happens after season 1, but they put it before season 3. And I guess Crunchyroll's just like, we need to go back to season 1 and review what happened there in case if anything comes full circle. Because, it's the last season. Typically in a narrative, some things from the first beginning of the story can come back. So yeah, it's one of those situations, right? So we'll talk about that here in a moment. But I do have some comments. We got the Reagan Thirst update. This is going to be a long intro, but needs to happen. I'm holding off from starting this final season as long as I can. H Banana 7 said that Suzuki being obsessed with leaving a mark and being afraid of being forgotten, whereas Mob is the polar opposite and isn't really concerned about being forgotten. They just are more concerned about their friends and family in the present than they are leaving a legacy. And I thought that was a really cool comparison and contrast between the two of them because Suzuki and Mob are so similar in terms of their powers, but their personalities and their motivations are so different. So I thought that was really cool to point out. And then, so we have this OVA recap, which we'll talk about here in a second, but we need to go through the Reagan Thirst update first, right? I've been bombarded by so many great pieces of Mob fan art that I had to literally pick my favorites, and it's the Reagan Thirst update, so Reagan's in all of them. But someone on YouTube was like, oh, did you see the wedding official art for Serizawa and Reagan? And I was like, wedding official art? So I went on to Discord and was like, what is this? And everyone there was like, I don't know about wedding official, but there is Reagan in this official wedding garb. And then Serizawa and Mob and Ritsu are in the tuxedos. And the Truck was commenting saying, well, it's Reagan in the wedding garb, but they're marrying Dimple. And I was like, ah! I thought that was great. I was like, that's really funny. Speaking of which, there's this amazing fan art of Serizawa and Reagan and Dimple looking like Men in Black. I love that look. I love that Dimple is often portrayed as when he possessed the one guard for that one episode. I love it. It's created all this fan art for that one moment. It's wonderful. And then Reagan has like the salt, like he's getting ready to throw it. And then Serizawa with the umbrella is iconic. Iconic. I freaking love it. But then there's lots of Serizawa and Reagan art. Say Ray, or Ray Say, whatever. I'm here for it. I'm glad there's a community that loves Serizawa and Reagan. I'm all here for it. I love this one where Reagan's like trying to do his job and Serizawa's like trying to reach over him. Serizawa is like what Mob would have become if he was like a sheltered adult, right? It's what he would have become. And I just love the idea that Serizawa is just basically, he's perfect for Reagan. He balances Reagan out very well, as we saw in the OVA. This one here of them like dancing together, like Serizawa is such like a bigger guy and Reagan just fits so perfectly against him. It's like, it's a shipping dream, right? And then I love this one. It's a subversion of Suzuki with the umbrella. Instead of Suzuki having the light under the umbrella, it's Reagan with the clouds and the sunny day. And then just him being held by Serizawa and him with that backpack. So cute. And then finally, because Reagan's not in it for the ladies. We've known that from the start of this series, which is actually something I want to comment about. Reagan's character And the reason why I love shipping him with Sarazawa admits in the OVA, he's like, I've never talked to a girl. I don't know what that's like. But Reagan's been to bars. He doesn't drink, but he's been to bars. He's been to all these social events. If he wanted to talk to a woman, he would have. So I'm like, I'm fully convinced Reagan is gay. Like, why wouldn't he be? And then so this edit, first of all, Yuki 119, who drew this, they draw Reagan so sexily. I was like, oh, yes, that's great. But then he's like, I do all sorts of stupid and gay shit. And I'm like, yes, all the gestures, everything. I'm like, Reagan, you're not fooling anyone, but we're here for you. So, and we support you. So, it's been like a wash. Like the truck opened up their dump truck, literally a fan art, and was like, here. And I was like, yes. I was like, bathe in it. It's great. But then anyway, the OVA. So I did not record my reaction to the OVA, the 1 hour one, only because it was a recap. And I was like, I don't like recaps. And I was like, I don't want to react to this. It's going to be just a recap of stuff we've already seen. But I will say this, if you get a chance, I'm going to show you some screenshots from it, because if you get a chance to go on Crunchyroll and watch it, it is worth watching. I'm actually glad that I watched it, because even though it's a recap and you can skip through the parts, you can like go on Crunchyroll and skip through the parts where you see it's stuff we've already seen. The framing device they use is hysterical, because what it is that Reagan, there's this woman on there, and her name is like whatever, it's like Katiana or something, and she's like this old psychic that has suddenly, what's her name? She has a funky name on here. But she has a name, and it's a Kirari Sophia, age undisclosed. And she's like this older woman that was like a young, beautiful psychic back in the day, and she's released a tell-all book about her psychic powers. And so Reagan gets the idea. He's like, well, I'm going to write a book about what's happened to me. And that's where the recap comes in, is that Reagan's book is everything that's happened in season 1. The funny part, the framing device that's hysterical, is that Reagan inserts himself into the story where he wasn't present. So, also, Bones, you're fooling no one. Throughout the entire opening part of this OVA, there are shots like this where it's just like, oh, do you want to see Reagan from these very risque perspectives? We'll show you those. And I'm like, well, you're not helping us, sir, to not want to like be simping for Reagan. So there was that. But the self-inserts in this episode, I will only show you 2 of them because I want you to go watch it. I like snorted my drink. I laughed out loud because like there's one where when Teru and Mob go to infiltrate Claw, Reagan inserts himself, and the animation team at Bones, they could have just redrawn it with Reagan. That's too much. Instead, they just put like a generic head over the animation. It's the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. I was like, no. And then there's one like with him as Dimple. It's the same, just emotionless expression. I was dying. It was so funny. And it happens all throughout. There's like scenes where Reagan's like inserted into the background and he's not there in the actual episode. Hilarious. A great framing device. And so Mob is tasked with the job of writing this narrative of Reagan's book. So he does, but Mob, because he's a sweet cinnamon bun, decides to have the Psychic Club help him proofread it. Be like, oh, will you help me proofread it, make sure I don't have any grammar errors? And who shows up? I thought this was cool. Who shows up at the middle school but Teru. Teru shows up with Ritsu, and he's like, oh, hey. He's like, you know what? We'll all proofread your story together. Because we don't want, and Teru's genius, like the psychology. Mob's like, well, I don't know. And Teru's like, oh, but Mob, we can't allow Reagan's reputation to be tarnished. Like the whole time, Ritsu has caught on that Mob is writing this story for Reagan, doing his dirty work for nothing, and is fabricating everything to take credit for everything, and Ritsu's not having it. So he gets everybody together, including Misato, including Teru, to proofread the story. And I love that Mob's like, wow, Hanazawa-kun's so smart. He's like, that's a great idea. We need to protect Reagan's reputation. And I will show y'all the sequence, but them reading Mob's draft where Reagan has fabricated and taken credit for everything. And then it's slowly devolving into them being like, are you serious? To the point where it's just in the darkness and Mob's just sitting there like, what do you think? And they're just like, this is all a bunch of BS. So they help Mob reword it and revise it to be accurate. And then Reagan prints it out. And again, I love Reagan's, like, his cover is him in like this shoujo, like, be shonen pose where he looks all sexy and everything. Like, Bones can draw it right. They're just keeping, you know, consistent with the manga style. But they can draw Reagan really hot if they want to. But I love that he's like, a true psychic is here. The miraculous unknown psychic, Reagan. And he hasn't proofread it before he put it to print. And then, as it turns out, he reads it and, yeah, is just absolutely stunned that it's all been corrected. And I love Dimple. I love Dimple's little grumpy face where he's like, that's what you get. I love Dimple in this episode. He's just like, that's what you get. I love it. That expression is adorable. I absolutely love it. But yeah, as far as my notes go, he basically just talks to Mob and them. It's great. And then having the peer review. Oh my God. So if you do get a chance, I do recommend it. I think it's a riot. I had a lot of, for being a recap, I really enjoyed it. And I didn't think that I would, because I usually just don't do recaps. So if you get a chance to watch it, give it a chance. It's really funny. The Reagan inserts are worth it alone. I was halfway through it, and then I was like, man, I should have recorded a reaction. But at that point, I was like, I'm already through it, so I'll just take screenshots and talk about it on here. But yeah. So, we're going to start season 3. 12 episodes. At this point, season 2 wrapped up pretty succinctly. I mean, the giant broccoli is there, but, and there's still loose threads with Tsubomi, with Sho, what he's up to. We got Serizawa working for Reagan now. There's lots of loose threads and things that season 3 could cover, but I'm assuming it's going to be Mob focused because he's our protagonist. And I do like Anime Annie talking about, like, by the end of that episode 13, Mob has become the protagonist. And I love that. I think that's really cool. So before we start real quick, I just want to give a special shout out to our philanthropy tier on Patreon. There are people that support me extra throughout the week and throughout the month, and I really, really appreciate it and help me pay for services and fun things like that. So thank you very much to all the patrons who help to fund me in doing what I enjoy, but a special shout out to Edgar, to Dana, to Anime Annie, to Larry Manning, and to the Truck, of course, who supplies all the fan art, or a lot of the fan art for the Reagan Thirst Update. There's several others on Discord that do as well. But thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. But let's get started, y'all. We are going to start episode 1 of season 3. New OP, new ED. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Oh, well, this episode was a way to start off the season and basically set up what our entire final season is going to be about. And I'm not going to rewatch the OP because I feel like I'm going to have 12 different times to watch it this season and pick out new things. But I mean, puberty, adolescence, that all seems to come into play. We still have the whole thing where he hasn't confessed to Tsubomi yet. He's probably going to try to do that this season because we built up for it for 3 seasons. If he doesn't, it would seem rather silly. This isn't Mizaki-kun, right? So, but the main thing with Mob is the idea that Mob, and I'm going to pull this just a hair forward, but the idea here, scoot it on down, is that Mob is growing up. And I do think that there are some things that are kind of pointed out here that are very, very interesting. And they're things that because I work as like an advisor for a college in addition to teaching and doing stuff like that. And so I come across this a lot. And a lot of people that are, 18 or 19, at least here in the US, that I talk to as students, they don't know what they want to do. And that's, it's so weird that there's this kind of an idea that you should know kind of what you should be figuring out while you're young, what you're passionate about, what you like doing. But I do have, personally, as a teacher and as an advisor, I always have like trouble being like, oh, you're 18. You shouldn't have your entire life planned out for you. No, that's not how it works, right? It works for some people that way. Some people get their life planned out and they're like, this is what I'm going to do. And it's like, cool, that's great. And then some people, like Reagan, they got bored at their old job and they just started something on a whim. And here's where it led them. Kind of like I started this channel on a whim and I really enjoy doing it. So it is interesting to see these characters and kind of and finding your career is hard because it changes for everyone. It's not the same. It's, you know, everybody goes to grade school and most people go to high school and you have that set path, right? But then as far as careers go, it's so individualized that it can be hard to know what you want to do. And Mob, you know, it's funny, Mob is a representative of the masses, and most people don't know what they want to do when they're his age. And it's hard I always feel bad when they're like asking a middle schooler what they want to do when they grow up, because it's great to have ambitions and aspirations and to have a passion, but it doesn't need to be set in stone, right? And that's kind of what the teacher tries to tell him later. He's like, you don't have to, you know, this can change along the way. And that's what his dad tries to tell him. He's like, you can change along the way. But I wanted to bring my board coon just to map out everybody kind of in their ranks. What I like is that Mob's like right in the middle. I would imagine, we didn't get salt and vinegar middle school, but I would imagine that Teru is like one of the top in his class. He's either one of the top of his class or he's towards the bottom. There's no in between. I feel like Teru is one or the other, and I feel like he's one of the top ones. He just seems like he would be, right? And Ritsu and Tsubomi are up there. So what I didn't say about the OVA, and I started saying it in the reaction, is that in the OVA, Reagan is narrating it, right? And now that I go back and look at this thing of all of them there, we have Sarazawa is like the guy with the fro with the crystal ball. Mogami is there. Judo is there. The one guy, Shibu, is there. There's all the psychics we've seen throughout this season are all there from the start. That's hilarious. And Reagan was behind all of them. That's really, really funny. But yeah, the OP is so good. I love it already. I love the song, the chorus. I'm excited to see all the imagery. There's so much going on. I'm just like, there's going to be a lot. But the words adolescence, like leaving up. I do love the end where Mob grows up and Reagan's got his hand on his shoulder and it's just one. Like 99.9% one. Like 100 could have equaled one, right? I love it. Like, you are the protagonist. Oh man. Bones is just, this is their darling and it's great, right? So we had this career path survey. Class 2-1, student 7 is Kageyama Shigeo. What do you plan to do after you graduate? Your first choice or desired school, everything. Okay, so it's just like, we don't really do career path surveys in the US. We do like, you know, quizzes and stuff, and you can do like different, you know, quizzes and surveys, but they're not required. So that's interesting. So yeah, everybody's like, what are you going to do? And I'm realizing that those guys in the mid intermission cards are the three of them from the Psychic Club when we get to it. He's like, I couldn't think of anything. And she's like, I'm going to study a school that studies UFOs. So I like that Tomei is like, I'm going to go here. So we have Tomei. I'm going to put Tomei. And out of 352, she is 305 out of 352. And she wants to go to a UFO school. Okay. All right. She wants to go to a school that will study UFOs. Sure. And then we have the other guys that are in there, and they are, now there's different classes that they are, so they are different ranks, right? There's a different number of classes. So the one guy is 297. He's 297 out of that. And then the other guy that's in a different grade, because there's only 350 in his class, he is 339 out of 350. So yeah, they're kind of like towards the bottom end of the class. They're not really the top students. They're not trying. He's like, I wrote down office worker. Like, one guy wants to work for a game company. So yeah, he wants to work for a game company, which I could totally see that. The one guy's like, I just want to be an office worker. He's like, I just want a 9 to 5. It's like, sure, that works. And he's like, I'm a first year, so I'm still contemplating my offers. Yeah, the one guy's the first year of middle school, so he's like he's a 313. He's 313 out of 347. So I'm like, Mob, you're not alone. He's undecided. He doesn't know what he wants to do yet. That's okay. But Mob wants to have a game plan, and he just can't think of one, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, I guess you're all actually thinking. He's like they're all thinking about it. So Mob's thing is that he's 190 out of 350. Okay, so he's the same age as this guy here. Okay, so he's a second year, and they're all third years. Okay, so they're third years there, which they're in Ritsu's class. All right. Which again, I'm like, Mob's right in the middle. Like, you could literally do anything, Mob. Anything you want to do. But it clearly is taxing on him. And they're like, I heard Takane-san. So Tsubome, her last name is Takane, is going to apply to Yuzu Pepper High School. Of course she's going to go to the posh elite high school. You need a standard score of 65. And it's one of the top 3 in our prefecture. It looks so cute, right? It's all yellow themed. So, okay, Tsubome is the 4th in their class. Tsubome is 4. And she wants to go to supposedly, that's what they've heard, Yuzu Pepper High. I feel like Teru would get into there too. I feel like he would be on board there. Right? And she's so cute. And I love Tomei's instantly like, she's just in a different league than us. Tomei's like jealous of her. And he's like, Tsubome-chan is amazing. And then I love that he still views the other girls as like just vegetables. She's like, Yuzu High is affiliated with a British high school. And yet we can even study abroad. So I do think it is kind of cool that she wants to study abroad. She is kind of like in a different league, and that's nothing against Mob, but like I don't know. I worry that this whole season, like if we're doing adolescence and stuff, this whole series has built up Mob asking her out. And again, I think it's one of those things where I don't want his heart to get broken. I don't want Mob's heart to get broken because I'm afraid he's going to ask her out and I'm afraid she's going to turn him down. And then it's going to be really bad. So, because even if she says yes, I feel like it's short-lived because I don't feel like her and Mob are compatible at all. So I'm just like, I don't know. And so he's like, studying abroad sounds super fun. And then when they pass by, we see the girls. It's their hair that makes Mob think they look like vegetables. The one girl's hair flips out like a pepper. That all makes sense now. And Mob's just like, his progress towards his explosion is 7%. But she walks past him and doesn't even notice him. And I'm like, damn it. Y'all know how I feel. So anyway, we go back to the spirits and such. And so Reagan's like, oh yeah, I had to fill one of these out when I was a student. He doesn't say that he actually talks about what he filled it out as a kid. I feel like he was kind of like Mob. He didn't know what he wanted to do. Or he had this idea in his head, but it didn't pan out at all, right? And the last thing that Reagan wants to do is admit to Mob that he's a failure. That's the last thing he wants to tell Mob because Mob respects Reagan and looks up to him. So the last thing he wants to do is for Mob to think that he's like, a loser, right? So Reagan, I'm glad at the end of the episode that Reagan comes clean and he admits that he kind of fabricated. I'm glad that Reagan comes clean about it. I do like that because I was afraid that Reagan, he tells kind of a white lie, and I feel like if he hadn't come clean at the end of the episode, it would have felt sour about his character. But no, he ends up telling Mob the truth, which I'm very glad about. But yeah, he expects Mob just to work for him, and Mob's like, this is just a part-time job. And he's like, oh, you never know. I like the eyebrow movement. He's like, there's a possibility this will turn into a reputable agency. Reagan's like, you never know. We might become, something legit. Or it'll be me and Sarazawa getting married and working here forever. I guess. I don't know. I love it. He's like, we could have a fan full of full-time employees in the future. And he's like, well, yeah. He's like, did you plan on opening this consultation office since you were in middle school, Master Reagan? And he's like, oh, of course not. I like that Reagan is at least honest, being like, what middle schooler would think of this? Like, I like that Reagan gets a little bit honest there with Mob. He's like, no middle schooler would think of something of this nature. I like the way they animate him in that shot. He's like, no. He's like, then when did you decide on doing this? And that's when Reagan backtracks and he's like, oh, well, he's like, I got so great at my one job, I need to move on. And Mob's like, you're truly amazing. And he's like, yeah, pretty much. As Sarazawa comes out from doing the bathrooms, I do feel a little bit bad for Sarazawa because Reagan is clearly making him do the grunt work. And I'm like, come on, Reagan, be nicer to Sarazawa. Come on. And I feel like he will be as the season goes on. Reagan's whole thing is that Reagan has to be like, he tries to portray this air of dominance. And I'm like, Reagan, you're a bottom, sir. I'm like, no, Sarazawa's definitely gonna be the one on top of the situation. But I like that Reagan tries to put on this air of being like the one in charge when Reagan is, and Reagan, to his credit, is super confident and he can be a leader, obviously. But I feel like Reagan tries to overcompensate a little bit especially when he feels threatened. Like him making Serizawa doing all the grunt work is kind of like him being like, he knows Serizawa is a really strong psychic. So he's trying to establish himself as the one in charge. And I'm like, Serizawa is a freaking golden retriever. He's not mutinying for anything. Like, you have nothing to worry about, Reagan. Come on. But real talk, Reagan is so a bottom. And then Serizawa's like, yes, sir. And he's so glad to see Mob. I love that Reagan I like Reagan tries to get like Serizawa all worked up, and Mob's like, Reagan's technically younger than Serizawa. He's like 2 years younger. Then we have this whole thing with the doll, the antique shop thing that gets brought in that is creepy as hell. And I like that Mob and Serizawa are like, yeah, that thing is cursed. And Reagan's like, oh, well then let's take care of it. That was actually really funny that Reagan could barely sense that it was. I like Reagan sees the price tag and he goes, yikes. And Serizawa says yikes, not because of the price, but because of what the man paid for it. Right? It's great as he passes the tea. And he's like, well, then let's exercise it. And he makes them leave so that they can do it. I love it. And I love that Serizawa, he questions why Reagan didn't know that the trinket had a cursed energy to it. And Mob knows that Reagan is not really psychic. He's spiritual. But Mob is so nice that he won't say it to embarrass Reagan. And so Reagan covers by saying, oh, I was testing you to see if you could figure out my mistake. And I love that he gets like the shonen, like the anime eyes. And Serizawa's like, oh no, I've messed up. And I just love Reagan clapping him on the shoulder being like, it's all right. I'm going to give you a second chance. You're a rookie. I'll let this slide. Oh my God, Reagan, you're ridiculous. And then Serizawa like exercises the spirit. And he's like, what do you think, Mob? Mob's like, oh, Serizawa is powerful. And Reagan's like, okay, good. I like that Mob kind of backs Serizawa up. And that's when they break off the arm of the thing. And Serizawa freaks out when the arm of the doll breaks off. And Reagan's like, no. Serizawa, we're going to improvise and fix this. I love that Reagan is a thinker. Reagan is like, he has tuna and mayonnaise. He's like, I'm on my toes. We're going to put some rice on this doll arm and we're going to fix this. He does so many attacks in this one episode. All of his special attacks. Serizawa's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, oh yes. I love he takes the rice and says, rice grain big bang. Oh my God. Amazing. Where he unlocks the true potential of a rice grain to its fullest extent. And then Serizawa is just amazed. He's like, Serizawa was rocked to the core by Reagan's limitless abilities. I'm like, Serizawa is like a puppy dog following you around, Reagan. Do not do wrong by this man. And then he says that, and found out just how big the world truly was. Oh my God, Serizawa. So then back at Mob's house, we go back where Mob is worried about what he wants to do and his career path. And he just can't figure out, he's like, I'm not sure what to do. And I like his dad's philosophy. His dad, he's like, you've got 10 years before you hypothetically graduate college. Just put something on there for now. You can change it later. I like the dad's kind of like, you're too young to worry about this. Like, don't even make it a big deal, right? Just put down office worker and it'll be fine. And I like that the wife is like, you're thinking too simple. I imagine he's an office worker, is what I imagine that his dad does. And the wife's like, let him be more ambitious. And then he's like, well, I don't even know what to do for high school yet. And I like that Ritsu's like, well, if you can't think of what to do, then why not try to find a job where you can use what you already excel at? And so, interestingly enough, Ritsu's the younger brother. That's right. He's fifth. He's fifth in his class, right? He's the younger brother. I always think, for some reason, Ritsu's older. So he's the younger brother. He's fifth. But when he says that, he says, use skills you're already excelling at. I'm like, he tells Mob to be a magician. And I'm like, well, that's kind of no different than working for Reagan. It's like, I do think Mob looks really cute with the little tuxedo and making the cards float. It's really sweet. And I like that the parents of Ritsu are like, oh God, you are going to be an office worker. You are going to work at an office. You aren't ambitious, Ritsu. I like that Ritsu is book smart, but like street smart, maybe not so much. That's actually hilarious. I love that so much. So he doesn't know what to put down. And like Dimple's like, you can just write whatever. Like you can. And Mom's like, well, what do you want to do, Dimple? And Dimple's like, I'm an evil spirit. What are you asking me? And then Dimple remembers that his whole goal throughout this entire series has been to make Mob a cult leader. And he's forgotten about that in along the way as he's gained the power of Nakama and helped out Mob in all these scenarios. He's forgotten that his whole purpose this entire series was to be an evil spirit that's using Mob to, take control of this cult. He's like, didn't I also have a goal? Didn't I forget that along the way? Oh yeah, I'd forgotten. I'm like, Dimple, now is not the time to become evil. Please don't. So, yeah. So we have Goda the third year, who is 343. He's towards the bottom of his class. Not in our heart, he's number one. Goda's in our heart, the number one dude of his class. But he's gonna be a farmer. With them muscles, I think so. He could pull the plow himself. He wouldn't even need a tractor. But yeah, I like that Goda kind of already knows. It's like, my family runs a farm, so once I graduate high school, that's kind of what I'm going to do. I might be taking it over. So I like these, like, grades aren't really a big thing, because that's what, and I like that, because that is the thing. I work at a college, but I very much understand that college is not for everyone. My brother went to college for 2 years and then was done. He was like, I want to work on the family farm. So I understand that it's not for everyone. Everybody has different ambitions and dreams. And some of those dreams involve college, some of them do not. So it's okay if what you do doesn't require a certain education. You just do what you got to do to make what you want to do the rest of your life feasible. So, yeah, I like that there's Goda, who's this nice representation of that, where he's like, no, I'm just going to work for the family farm. It's cool, right? I love that. Goda's going to have a wife and like 20 kids and have his own baseball team, basically. And then we have the other guys who, I'm not going to write them down. They're like 283 and 267. And so the one guy says, I'm going to be going to high school. That's all he knows yet. And the other guy's like, the track and field sports recommendation. He's like, I'm going to get a job where I can work out my muscles. So yeah, the one guy's like, I'm just going to get a job out of high school. And the other guy's like, I'm going to try to go to a special high school based on sports. So it's like kind of, the sports anime route. And it's kind of cool. And then the one guy's like, my parents want me to become a civil servant, but with my grades. And then the one dude's second in his class. The one guy is like, he's second in Mob's class. Like the number 2, but he's going to become a veterinarian. So I'm like, of course. I'm like, that's so amazing. I like that this episode spends time talking about what each of the characters are going to do. And then, like, who knew that one guy was second? He's like even above Tsubomi. He's like the second in his class. That's really cool. We don't get to know who's first in class, but that's so neat. He's like, I love animals. I decided I'm going to be a vet. That's neat. And everybody's kind of like, oh. And then Onigawara. He is the second to last in the class. Onigawara is 351. And Goda's like, you're going to be a manga artist, right? If they make Onigawara, because Onigawara kind of sounds like one, if they make him if it's like a Bilbo Baggins, Frodo Baggins thing where he writes the Mob Psycho manga at the end of this and it's his story, that would be amazing. If that was the case, he wants to be a manga artist. And he's 351 out of 352. I would actually really like it if Onigawara wrote the manga at the end of this story that is Mob Psycho. That would be so cool if it was a self-insert. And you know what? That kind of reminds me of Charles Schultz, who did the Peanuts comic in the US. He dropped out of high school. He was not a school kid at all. And then he created Peanuts and became famous. So, but I like Goda doesn't judge Onigawara for becoming a manga artist. He's like, isn't that what you want to do? And he's like, what the hell, man? He's like, I told you that in private when we were making out. What are you doing? He's like, I told you that in confidence. He said you were going to go to a co-ed high school that had a manga club. And he's like, stop, you're embarrassing me. I'm like, oh. And he's like, the hell are you explaining all that for? And Mob's like, I guess everybody's got a good idea about their future already. And Mob standing in front of the giant broccoli. He's like, I don't know what to do. That's such an image of him in front of that big old broccoli. Like Mob has all this potential. He can do anything. I mean, the theme of the last season's OP was your life is your own. He could do anything he wants, but he just doesn't know where to go. And then Misato comes in. Misato is interesting. She's become quite an interesting character in this because she like has the camera. I fully believe she'll be a journalist for sure. She's like 60th in her class. And she says the terrorist attack the other day. She's like, everybody thought it was an attack accompanied by a natural disaster. But I figured out it was a fate for the world going on. And her image of Mob, I'm like, does Misato secretly like Mob? I feel like she kind of does, but she doesn't want to admit it because she imagines him with like an 8-pack. He has like Aaron Yeager abs there, right? And this like trail of hair and everything. I'm like, why did you make him look so sexual, Misato? There's no reason for that. He's a middle schooler. Stop. I just like that he has like the ripped shirt and everything. I'm like, Misato, this was your vision of him, huh? And then she says, oh, but you also suffered a great loss. And it's like him holding Reagan is what it is. It's Mob holding Reagan. What the hell? I mean, I guess we all imagined that might have happened in season 2. Maybe. Oh my God. I'm like, Misato. And she's like, that about covers it, huh? And he's like, no, actually, I was about to like think about my career path. I'm not thinking about that. And she's like, what about the broccoli? And he explains what it is. She's like, and so then she says that they've organized a religion. And if you look, the broccoli head is Mob's head. And they've made the eyes and the face. That's Mob. It's the Psycho Helmet religion has made this divine, they call the broccoli the divine tree. And they have like all this festival stuff around it. It's like a big spectacle. There's green popcorn. So it says soy sauce, green onion ponzo, mentaiko mayo. And everybody's just hanging out there. And what does it say? Divine tree spice, thickly cut cow tongue. My dad had cow tongue on a trip recently. He said it was fine if you didn't think about it. I was like, we raise cows, so I'm like, a cow tongue? Ugh, no. We've begun selling the Divine Tree's Bounty roll cake, the Divine Tree's Bounty, cream, matcha, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. And he says it's the Psycho Helmet religion. You want to connect that thing with them. You've got to get it for once. Exactly. Experience the miracles. And she tells, Misato's hard to read because on the one hand, it's like she goes to this like almost like an act, like she says that he's divine, but then she knows that he's just a normal kid too. So Misato's kind of a hard character to read, but I like her character a little bit more because she is layered and she's interesting. And he's like, do you know what your future is going to be, Misato-san? She's like, oh yeah, I've already. She's like, oh, what do you mean? Yeah, I've already figured that out. I'm going to be a photographer. Yeah, a journalist, something like that. Again, not everybody's set in stone. They all kind of have tentative ideas, but nobody's like fully certain about something except maybe Tomei, but even Tomei doesn't know what she's doing. So Mob just gets so discouraged because he doesn't know. And he tells Misato, I'm sure there'll be even bigger things in your life, Misato-san. That's so sweet. He's like, plenty of them. And she's like, I don't think that's going to happen again. She's like, I don't think we're going to have that tree come up again. Famous last words. But yeah, that's interesting. I like the friendship that Mob and Misato have. I really do. I like it. She's like, it's not about using fancy words or how big something may look. What else is there? And he's like, well, it's like when I joined the Body Improvement Club. And she's like, how is that a huge deal? And he's like, it's not different from what you're saying, Misato-san. He's like, I mean, that thing's just a broccoli. She's like, oh, it's just a broccoli. She's like, how am I supposed to accept that? So I like that Mob's like, no. He's like, sometimes we make things out to be bigger than they are. He's like, that's just broccoli, but people are over-exaggerating what it is. It's like Mob kind of knows the answer. He just doesn't realize he knows the answer, right? I do like the friendship him and Misato have, though. I like their relationship. I get a little wary with Misato because I'm like, okay, girl, stop trying to push Mob to be this Psycho Helmet religion person. You know he's not meant for it, but I do like otherwise their relationship. What are you going to do in the future, Mob-kun? And he's like, I can't think of anything. And I feel for Mob. I feel for him. I want him to find something that he wants to do. So we get the intermission. And it's the people from the psychic club. We see the one guy as an office worker. She has like the UFO floating, and the other guy has all the video games around him. So it's cool. It's all of them grown up. That's really neat. I like that. And then we cut to the body improvement club, and we see them all grown up. And I want to get a picture of that because it's so cute. Like, we see Onigawara as the manga artist with the beret, and we see the one guy, like, running track and field. The one guy has, like, the animals. The other guy's a civil servant. Goda has, like, all the leeks and all the food. It's so cute. I love that. And poor Mob, he doesn't know what he wants to do. So, we go to this one guy's house where he thinks he's possessed by an evil spirit, and it's just like a hoarder's house. And it's really disgusting. And Reagan's just like, I can't. I'm with Reagan. I'm like, nope. I'm like, this can't do the house. Can't do the dirty house. No, with all the roaches and everything. Nope, can't do it. Won't be a part of it. Poor Reagan. But yeah, what was interesting is, it turns out to be an evil spirit, right? But there is a moment where you wonder, is it really an evil spirit? Or is it this guy that's just so down and out that he's trying to blame the spirit for his problems, right? That he has all this stuff in his life going on, like the hoarding and like everything being gross, and he's just blaming a spirit for it instead of cleaning up his own act, right? And it kind of turns out to be a combination of both of it, but it's hilarious seeing Reagan just be like, oh my God, I cannot. This is not going to work. And then he's like, I don't know why I get all these cavities. I don't know why. I had a girlfriend and it chased her away. And I like that Reagan's like, you had a girlfriend, huh? Like, he's just like, really? What'd she look like? And then she's, I guess, are they trying to say she's a prostitute maybe? I love that Reagan's like, was she your girlfriend? Really? And then we says he's been losing his hair, and they see the old picture of him. He never had that hair to begin with. And him and Mob are like, we're dealing with somebody kind of crazy here. He's like, I was a bit of a rebel back then. And Mob and Reagan are like, oh my God, he never had the hair. I love that they're both on the same page. And I love that Reagan just can't take it. He's like, I've got to go grab some exorcism tools. Like, he's just like, and he does. He actually, here's the thing. I will say this for Reagan. He doesn't run away. He actually went to a convenience store and got bug spray and all this other stuff. Like, he legit went and got things to take back to the house. He didn't just abandon Mob and Sarazawa. He went to go get things and also to get fresh air. Right? He was like, I gotta get out of here. And it's funny that, like, he's like, am I doomed to repeat these meaningless days until my death? And there is something relatable to that, because yeah, there is a part of you sometimes that gets like kind of weighed down with the day-to-day drudge, and you're like, is this all that it's gonna amount to? And Sarazawa kind of understands that. He's like, I didn't think I'd ever leave my room. And he's been writing down everything on the book. He's like, shoulders heavy, sleep paralysis, cavities, fired from job, girlfriend left, evil spirit, garbage. If no one can get rid of the evil spirit, I may have to repeat the meaningless days. Lost his parents in his 20s. Relatives cut ties with him. And as the evil spirit is leaking out, like draining them of their, passion and enthusiasm, Mob and Sarazawa kind of lament that they don't know what they're doing, right? What's fascinating about all of this is that as like this giant big-lipped spirit comes about, as this is happening, Reagan's not affected. Reagan's not affected at all. He's like, Reagan's so charismatic and so sure of himself and his current life situation. He's got it figured out so well that it doesn't affect him at all. And he's like, no. And when it starts trying to get him down, he uses, like, when all the mouths surround him, he uses the double hydrogen water mist, which is freaking hilarious. And then he goes up to see Mob and then is like, look, there's an evil spirit. And they're like, oh, well, there it is. And Reagan's like, get rid of it. And Mob and Sarazawa do. And then they end up leaving the guy. And I like that the man is totally fine because he had insurance. And Reagan's like, oh, thank God. We don't have to repay for the roof. He's like, we don't have enough money for this. And so the guy leaves. What's interesting is that he gets his, like, shonen manga. I feel like it's like starting the hoarding all over again. But because he had like 4 big stacks of it. And then when they go back, Reagan's like, are you okay? And Sarazawa's like, that hit clue too close to home. He's like, I've lived 30 years and I have nothing. I really was hoping Reagan would comfort him a little bit more, but Reagan's kind of like, dude, the thing of it is, Serizawa is an adult, Mob is a kid. And I feel like Reagan comforts Mob because he's a kid, right? And he wants to set a good example. With Serizawa, Reagan's like, you're a grown-ass man. You're going to be fine. Like, he treats Serizawa like an adult. And I do kind of like that. He's like, you'll be fine. He's like, you can't let every little client affect you. And then Mob gets affected too. And Reagan's like, are you kidding? You both are the same. He's like, seriously. He's like, I haven't made a huge mistake yet, but that moment may arrive someday. And it's like, dude, it's like you're in middle school. It's okay to make a mistake. You'll be all right. And he says, I just don't want to make the wrong decision. And Reagan's like, you're still thinking about all that. And I like that at this moment, Mob goes up to Serizawa and he's like, you'll get to hear stories from everybody and learn a lot. He's like, you'll be fine. But it's him that he's worried about. So on his paper, he basically chose that he was going to high school. And Mob's like, I just couldn't think of anything. And so they talk about like public school versus like the Yuzu private school. That's the thing too. Like if Mob doesn't end up at the same school as Tsubomi, what's going to happen then? I mean, maybe he'll have a different experience, and maybe that's part of the season is Mob realizing that things may change and it's okay. Like he may go to a different high school than Tsubomi and it's all right. He'll meet other people, you know, and it's the sad, bittersweet aspect of growing up, because like if you know friends for a while and you move on, like I was fortunate enough, I went to a very small school and I went to like grade school, middle school, high school with some of the same people. So I knew them my whole life. But then when you hit college, you go separate ways. And there's some of them that I'm really good friends with still, but a lot of them you just don't see anymore and you never see them again. They go off and do their own thing and you keep up with some, but you make new friends along the way, and you make new friends and you have new connections. And a lot of times it's better because you find people, it's like the saying is you find your tribe. You find people that you relate to, that you have interests with, and you can talk to, that, you know, in high school and grade school, you're kind of stuck with and you kind of have to make it work. But then when you branch out, you meet all these new people. And so, but that's hard. That transition is hard. And anytime you have change, it's hard. And so I understand that Mob is a Taurus like me. So it's like, we understand Tauruses don't like change. And so it's hard because at this time in their lives, they're all kind of going different ways, and it can be scary, right? So I get that. And he's like, if you're shooting for public school, you have to do something about your math and geometry scores and do better on your next test. And he's like, oh, yes, sir. And he's like, that's it. He's like, but if you have some kind of goal for the future, then it's easier to plan out your life that way. So he's like, you don't have to have a career in mind, but like a goal. He's like, there's no need to hurry, but if you don't find something in your teens, you may come to regret it because you aren't being set up for the right track. And he kind of laments, you know, he's a teacher, but he wishes he was able to travel more. So he kind of has regrets, right? It kind of almost seems like he was stuck in the teaching position. He's like, but you'll be okay. And then Mob's like, I think being a traveler might be a great option too. And then he's like, I think it's a little concerning how easily you're influenced. Mob is easily influenced, right? That is one of the things. So I can't read Japanese, so I can't see what he put on his career thing. And so then I love this ending scene where Mob, you know, he's like, Reagan, I don't think I'm going to work here the rest of my life. And I love that Reagan says, good, I see. Mob's like, it's really comfortable here and I can talk to you about anything. But this, he says, if I stay here, if I get too comfortable, then the only thing that will change is my age. Yeah, and that's the thing. Mob is impressionable, and like your first job and everything is cool, but Mob's like, I need to go out into the world and see my potential and see what I can do. He's like, if I just stay here, everything's gonna be stagnant. And for Serizawa, he's already an adult. This is the stability he needs as an adult. But for Mob has a big old world to see. And I love that Reagan's like, yeah, no. He's like, that's fine. He's like, I'm sorry, Master Reagan. I can't promise you I'll be working here in the future. And I love that Reagan's like, he kind of sighs and goes, of course, I was only kidding. I love that Reagan's so mature about this. He's like, you'll eventually find plenty of things you'll want to do. Remember when you asked me why I opened up this office. I love he tells the truth here. He's like, I know what I said the other day, but the truth is I got bored at my old job. And so I started this one on a whim. But what he doesn't tell Mob, and that I'm so mad at, is at first I figured I'd get bored after about a year and quit. But that was around the time. Anyway. And I was like, damn it! He's like, anyway, there's some twists and turns, and here we are today. I feel like that conversation is going to come back, just like it did in season 2, just like it did in season 1. That's going to come back. And Reagan's going to tell Mob at some point, the reason why I kept going and doing this job was because of you. I'm waiting for it. And I was like, ooh, Reagan, you're so close. But he doesn't do it. I'm like, damn it. Okay. He's like, you should live however you want to. And I love that Mob's like, Master Reagan. Like, yeah, Reagan is such a con man and he can be such a turd. But then at the end of the day, he says things like that. And you're like, damn it, Reagan. I can't get away from you, right? Can't do it. And then Mob just leaves. And Reagan's like, we haven't started work. Which Mob gets barely paid enough. It's like, come on, Reagan, you have Sarazawa. Let's be real. I love that he just leaves the two of them there. It's wonderful. Future career paths. And then, yeah, everybody is looking up at the tree, like, after the stands. And Dimple's like, well, my time's arrived. I was like, damn it, Dimple. I was thinking Dimple was going to be good this whole time. I'm like, is he going to become evil again? No, surely not. This is a really good episode. I definitely think that, again, like I said at the beginning, Mob Psycho is one of those series where it's like getting a dose of therapy every 23 minutes. Like each episode has like a motivational or inspirational idea, and it's not hokey, it's not preachy, it's not like force-fed to you. It happens so naturally and streamlined that it just warms your heart, and you're like, yes, Mob, I do love this so much. So I really liked this episode. This was a great start to the series. A nice setup of Mob going through adolescence. He's having to pick what he's going to do. Things are changing. It's it feels like a transition at the end of the story. Like we've covered this time in Mob's life. And it just makes me realize I need to savor these last 11 episodes very much. So I'm really excited to see what you all say down below, your comments. I may have to unfortunately watch ahead for a trip that I'm leaving on, so I may have comments to talk about. I may not. I'll definitely have a Reagan Thirst update, though. That's happening. So in the meantime, though, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Mob Psycho 100. Bye.